In video games over the last several years, the discussion around difficulty has become one of the most popular in and around the medium. Some think games should have easy modes and accessibility options, while others think the exact opposite. The accessibility crowd wants anyone to be able to buy and beat any game, while the others want developers to be able to pick and choose what should and or should not be in their games. The games these discussions usually revolve around don't vary a lot. It's usually games like Cuphead and Celeste, which both have their own philosophy around difficulty, which in Celeste's case runs the gamut from most accessible settings you can imagine, all the way up to the brutal difficulty of getting the strawberries or playing the B-side of the game. Then on the other side of the coin, you have one game, or really one series of games, from developer FromSoft, makers of Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and more. These games are brutally difficult, and bosses alone can take hours and dozens of attempts to beat. The kicker, if you don't know, is that none of these games have difficulty modes. So if you're having trouble with a boss, you just have to, quote, get good. Of course, there are always ways to make it easier on yourself, but many of these won't be apparent, especially to a new player who's been told to get good. So, is it better to have difficulty options, or is it better to have one difficulty tailor-made that everyone has to play? Well, there is one other company that's known for having no difficulty settings. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum is good old family-friendly Nintendo. On the surface, Nintendo and FromSoft don't have much in common. Nintendo, for the most part, makes bright, colorful, hopeful games designed first and foremost around fun, while Dark Souls and the like are dark, dour, depressing worlds that couldn't care less about the player. Of course, Nintendo games, for the most part at least, don't have near the difficulty as FromSoft games. However, all that being said, one thing Nintendo and FromSoft games share revolves around difficulty. Much of the time, neither of them have difficulty modes. Pokemon, Zelda, Pikmin, Donkey Kong, the Dark Souls of platformers, none of them have difficulty modes, although to be fair, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze does have Funky Kong mode, which is basically easy mode. However, besides that and a couple of others, much of Nintendo's catalog does not have traditional difficulty modes. Their games have their difficulty tailor-made down to every last jump in every level, and just like in FromSoft games, this works out very well. Putting a ton of time into each level compared to other developers usually results in a curated experience down to the last pixel. You could argue that developing games in this way can or does result in video games that are too easy in Nintendo's case, or too hard in FromSoft's case. But at the end of the day, it's kind of cliche to say, but every game just simply isn't for everyone. It might not be what you want to hear, but it's the truth. I've owned Cuphead since launch, and many years later I still have not been able to beat it. On a similar note, I bought games that I just didn't gel with, and unless it's on Steam, usually I'm kind of just out of luck. It may sound obvious, but as consumers, we have to do our best to figure out if a game is for us before we buy it. Find a reviewer or outlet whose opinion we align with, and read or watch their coverage of the game. Find multiple reviewers to compare what they say. Not wanting to play a game because it's too easy or too hard is just as valid of a reason as any. However, if a developer wants to make that hyper-curated experience without difficulty modes, it's not our right to force them to do otherwise. But what about you? What do you think? Do you like the way Nintendo and FromSoft do it, or do you prefer difficulty modes? What about other ways of making games easier or harder, like powerful character builds or challenge runs? Well, I think that's just about going to do it for today's video. Make sure to like if you enjoyed it. It really helps the algorithm, and of course subscribe as well. I hope everyone has a great day, and I will see you guys next time.